Well, hello again and welcome back. Uh, this video will be addressing the Jones model, Jones, Jones model of classroom management. And it is the creation of a Dr. Frederick Jones, who was a clinical psychologist, and his seminal piece of literature is and remains to this day a book called Tools for Teaching. Um, is an excellent addition to any professional library, and I highly suggest that you consider acquiring it. Tools for Teaching. Jones, like many other outstanding leaders in the classroom management field, went in and observed lots and lots and lots of teachers, most of whom had been designated by their peers or their administrators as being exemplary or natural teachers, gifted teachers perhaps. And so Jones went in and observed them, and he found that they shared, not surprisingly, several similar traits amongst themselves. And one was that they were very engaging, that the students didn't just sit there, that knowledge wasn't just lobbed at them, that they were very engaging, that their classrooms were busy, had activities sprinkled throughout the period or certainly throughout the week, and that at the end of the observation time, the students were a different place than when they had started. And you know, those things all sound like common sense to us as educators, but they weren't. Some of us were doing it and some of us weren't. So what I want to do today is not speak to the Jones model exhaustively, but I just want to tease out pardon me, a couple of key components and discuss those individually. So it's kind of like Jones light, if you will. One of the first components that Jones discusses is the classroom seating arrangement. Now, many of you probably don't even consider how critical seating arrangement, I'm talking about the actual arrangement of desks on the floor, how critical that is to classroom management. I can walk into a classroom, look at the setup of the desks, and tell you what kind of teacher that is, as far as openness, as far as engaging. Jones says in order to maintain classroom management, and he weaves this through a number of the key components, and you'll see that in just a minute, that an educator, a teacher, needs to be able to circulate constantly. Now, obviously, if you're circulating, you can't be sitting at a desk and you're not standing behind a podium. You are circulating. So you need a classroom arrangement which will afford you that opportunity. Jones has what he calls the, excuse me, the interior loop. And you can find that online, I'm sure, that allows the teacher to move. I always used in my classroom, I found personally for my own success, I used a double file horseshoe, okay, like an interior horseshoe or a U and an exterior horseshoe. And then they were just desks in front of each other. That gave me the entire central area of the classroom to move around. And I would be no more than 3 steps away from any student's desk. But in order to do that, as Jones identifies, you have to circulate. You have to teach on your feet. Okay? Which means you need to know where you're going, obviously, literally. Um, but you have to circulate. If you have students that are in rows of 5, and the rows are narrow, and you can't get through them, then chances are you're going to have some challenges in the back of the room, right? That's a given. But if literally there is no back of the room, although there always will be, but there's not 5 desks of insulation to get to that student, then you have the ability to present yourself in front of that student in a very few number of steps, if and when you need to. Seating arrangement. Second key component is a technique that Jones calls say, see, do. All right? And this involves effectively presenting a mini lesson on something. And it doesn't matter whether it's a social studies mini lesson or a math mini lesson or a science mini lesson. It doesn't matter. This procedure, this process applies to all of those. And you just chunk it into a little piece. Okay? The instructor introduces what's going to be happening. That's the say part. They then demonstrate on the board, on a lab table, in the classroom in general, by seeing, they demonstrate. Then the student is brought in to the do piece. See, say, do. It engages your students continuously throughout the class period because you have chunked, you have divided your lesson up into little mini lessons, and this is the way you're teaching. See, or probably say, I'm going to tell you what we're doing here. We're going to identify the quadratic formula. Okay? So then you see it, you put it on the board. And then you do it with the students so that they're brought in. We've all survived classwork from an instructor where everything was lobbed at us. Okay. There was no do involved. The only do we did was we came into the classroom at bell time, we sat down, and we do leave at the end of the class. That's the only do part. No, Jones says that's absurd. I would agree with him. Create a mini component. Identify it, demonstrate it, bring the class in to do it. Now, the third piece I want to talk about that Jones points out, and once again we would think this would be self-evident, but it tends not to be, and it goes very much with the circulating in the classroom, is the use of your body language, and I'm going to add the component of voice. The use of body language. Now, we all know what that is. We're growing up learning what it is, okay? Mom always had that look, didn't she? And we knew that if we went one step further, we were going to be in deep trouble, right? Well, gee golly, what would be wrong with you employing that same look in the classroom, where you've got a student who is maybe 2 desks away, and you're in the middle of instructional delivery, and that student makes eye contact, and you flash that student a look that clearly demonstrates what that student is doing at that moment in time is not acceptable, and that student will respond. And maybe you take another step closer just to ensure that that's happening. All right? As you're circulating, you notice that the student is becoming distracted. You find a way to walk by the desk, maybe do nothing more than tap on the desk. That student realizes that's a reset. You haven't skipped a beat with your instructional delivery because you're teaching on your feet and you're employing the nonverbal tools that you have at your disposal. Use them, but you can't use those tools by sitting at your desk or remaining behind a podium. It just will not work, and you are giving up a lot of things that could be working well for you. Now, I want to mention voice here at the same time just briefly because I cover the use of voice in a whole other video and its criticality. But your voice is an important tool. It can destroy classroom management or it can command classroom management. Okay? So your body language is key. It's an easy tool. You've got it every day with you. It doesn't cost you anything to use. All right. And the last component I want to talk about as far as kind of the Jones Light caper here is preferred activity time. Through it's PAT is the acronym, obviously. Now I have dedicated an entire video to discuss PAT in detail. But let's just have it suffice to say at this point, it is a reward system. It's a reward system that Jones brilliantly designed to remove all the problems that most reward systems have. It's student guided, it's student selected, it's student earned, and it's student participated in. So I urge you to maybe after this flip over to the preferred activity tape and watch the two together. Let's flip back to the top. Key components of Jones's model. Seating arrangement. Set your desks up so that you can easily, keyword, easily maneuver. Not that you turn sideways and do step, step, step and everything. No. So that you can easily maneuver amongst the students. Number 2, say, see, do. Break your lesson, your instructional delivery up into small components, little mini lectures. Once you start doing it, you'll see where there are dividing points. Okay? Capitalize on those. Keep your approach simple. Keep it short. Say what you're going to do. Show it to the students. Let them do it. Set an appropriate amount of time, and then move on to the next piece. There's a flow. You want to keep going. Body language and voice. Use it. You've got it. Everyone's got it. Okay? Doesn't matter whether you're male, female. Doesn't matter. If you need some help, talk to your mom. Talk to the woman next to you. Okay? Learn its power. It will allow you to communicate not only your pleasure, but your displeasure without saying a word, without skipping a beat, without taking away from that instructional delivery time. And lastly, preferred activity time. I discussed that on its own in a separate video. Let's get back to class.